Hey guys, my name's Ravi Sharma and I'm the founder and buyer's agent here at Search Property. Thank you so much for joining me on yet another episode of Search Property TV. If you haven't already, please smash that subscribe button down below and hit the like button because I want the YouTube algorithm to put this out to the people that really need it. Now, in this video, I want to go through exactly what you need to get started. Basically, how much of a deposit and what are the costs you need to actually be able to get into a property or an investment property when starting out. So if that's of interest to you, keep watching. So at the moment, we've got a lot of talk about, deposit schemes and government-backed deposit schemes. It's very difficult to keep up with how much exactly you need as a deposit to get started investing. Now, I get a lot of calls, a lot of people emailing me talking about, hey, I'm 18, or hey, I'm 22, or I'm 35 and I'm 40 and I'm actually looking at investing into my first property. How much do I really need, Ravi? So I thought this video would bring you so much value. It's a very simple guide to get you started. So to illustrate the example, I want to talk about a property worth $220,000. And generally speaking, if we're looking at investing, we're looking at a 10% minimum deposit. Now, yes, there's a deposit scheme that the government has launched, which is a 5% loan home deposit scheme. So when you're starting out investing, we're looking at a $220,000 home in this example. But of course, if the numbers are higher or lower than that, you can adjust accordingly. But we're going to get some figures out here and I'm going to break down exactly what this includes. So on a purchase of $220,000, you need a 10% deposit, which would work out to be $22,000. Now you take out a 90% loan, but you will incur an LMI cost. Now, something to note here, guys, there are ways to actually avoid LMI and paying it. So if you are interested in watching that video, I haven't created one yet, but if you're interested in that, please comment down below and I will definitely make a video about how to avoid paying LMI in Australia. But let's continue. So stamp duty, and I've just calculated this for New South Wales, would equal about $8,270, and then you have some upfront costs, which would include pest and building reports plus conveyancing. Now, pest and building inspections, they're basically, in a nutshell, will be pre-inspections to you purchasing the property, and it's really about finding out what exactly this property has in terms of deficiencies and if there are any minor or major damages that you aren't able to actually just see based on the photos or video that you get sent. So these are conducted by professionals, licensed professionals that go through the property, take photos and provide you with an inspection report. Now, I would not purchase a property at all, whether I'm to live in it or it's an investment property, without doing one of these checks. So if you are looking at investing and you haven't done one of these, please get it done. It's part of our due diligence process when we're looking at investing for our clients and is definitely a must-have. When we're talking about conveyancing, that's just another word for, property law, getting contracts done. And so you really need a licensed professional here as well. They will actually help you go through the contract and go through all those clauses because contracts can be quite long. But the way in these clauses and terms and conditions are written, it can be quite confusing. So you need to have a licensed professional on your side as a conveyancer to be able to facilitate that process for you so that it runs smoothly. So I've got a cost here associated of being $2,000. Now, of course, in this case, it really depends on which suppliers you're using, which state you're in, and how much it's actually going to cost, because they do vary. So $1,500 to about $3,000 is about average for these sort of services. So that would make your upfront costs $32,270. Now, of course, if you're going to use a buyer's agency service, now this would apply to, different buyer's agents have different costs and fees. But in this example, we're just going to take an average and that's going to be about $13,200. So in the grand total to get started would be $45,470. Now, guys, a few things to cover off here. Now, before you go, oh my God, I've got $45,000, I can go and purchase a property. There's a few things we need to consider here. Now, when it comes to the $45,000 in total, which we're roughly saying is $45,000, not $45,470, because that's a mouthful, we're just gonna say it's about $45,000 to get into a property worth $220,000 in Australia. Now, a couple of things to factor in. The cost for stamp duty can differ state from state, so you need to check in which state you're purchasing. Pest and building, again, depending on the vendors you use, and of course, the conveyancing costs can also differ. I found that when you go to a law firm that actually doesn't specialize in conveyancing and they do like litigation and things like that, they generally charge a much higher premium versus companies that are specific for property conveyancing, they generally tend to be a bit cheaper. The other point to note here is buyer's agency fees. Now, I'm not sure how the majority of other people work, but for us, we work on a payment which is divided into two payments. We've got the first, which is the deposit. Now that's the retainer or the deposit, and that's essentially to get started. It gets us into a contractual agreement that we're going to be your buyer's agents. And then you've got the final fee, which is made up of the remaining fees, and that's paid at settlement of the property. So some people get this confused going, oh my God, okay, I need the $13,000 or $15,000, $16,000, however much you're getting charged at the beginning, all up front. But it's not the case. You basically get the deposit paid, and then if say you find the property and you're ready to go and it's gonna settle in say 4 months time, well then the remaining funds get paid 4 months down the track. The other thing I generally tell people and clients that wanna get on board is that yes, $45,000 is a great start and it gets you into a property. However, you also need something called an emergency fund. Now, what's an emergency fund? It's basically some money that's put aside for a rainy day. Now, throughout my process, every step of the way for every client, I am trying to mitigate risk. That's basically trying to reduce your level of risk and exposure and essentially get you into a place where you're going to be mentally satisfied and be not stressing out because you have a home loan or an investment property. What I generally tell people is $5,000 to $10,000 as an emergency fund is pretty much what average people do, and I recommend the same. So of course everyone's risk tolerance is different, and for me when I was starting out, it was pretty much allocating $5,000 per property just in case something happened to me, not so much the property, because when you're looking at the fundamentals and you're looking at rental vacancies, you've got certainty that there's going to be a tenant in there long term. In fact, some of my tenants have been in my properties longer than I've owned them. So they've been in there for about 15, 16 years. The one that's the longest has been in there for 17 years. So you can just tell that they want to take care of the property like it's their own home. And of course, with that comes certainty, right? So initially for my first few purchases, it was like $5,000 per property I'd put aside. But once I got to my buffer zone of about $20,000 to $30,000, I've got a portfolio worth say 6 or 7 properties. That's when I thought, okay, I don't need to take as many buffers for each property. I've got the lump sum that's sitting there. And if you purchased and you diversified your risk in different locations, you've then essentially assured yourself that you don't need to have such a large buffer, an emergency fund. But of course, everyone's tolerance is different. So think about what you need. And of course, if you're utilizing our services, we're going through that process with you and ensuring that we have the adequate amount of emergency funds before we even get you into an investment property. So the other option that most people have been taught, including myself when I was growing up, was you needed a 20% deposit to get into a home. There was a non-negotiable, there was nothing else possible. And so often I'm surprised by the conversations I have with people that even today, I have people talking to me about how they're almost at 20% deposits. And I'm thinking, where did you not think that this wasn't the case? Why did you not question whether you could get into properties less than 20%? And of course, it slows down the process. When you're in your acquisitions phase of your strategy, which is the first foundational phase of the portfolio, you need to be trying to leverage as much as you can. And of course, there's a mad reminder for you that this is not financial advice. If you do seek that sort of advice, then do contact us. We can point you in the right direction. But essentially, you don't need 20% to get into a property. Now there's cases for 5%, but of course I find that way too risky and I wouldn't advise that. I think when you're going in at 10% and then you're able to buy 10% under market value, you're really leaving a buffer zone there just in case there's small shifts in the volatility of that market, but you've insured yourself because you bought under market value with our help, but you're also able to go in, I've got a 10% deposit versus a 5% deposit where you're essentially going any small trigger of that price point or in that market, you're in negative equity territory, and that is super bad. So very short, sharp video here, guys. I really wanted to bring some value. I've been getting asked this question a lot lately, and so I thought I'd bring it out here, how much of a deposit I really need to get started into investing. And of course, $45,000, $50,000 is not much compared to what we were taught, where some people are having to save $100,000, $200,000. Of course, you're gonna get left behind. That's why there's people out there that are leveraging their money to the maximum capacity and being able to move really quickly. This is exactly how I did mine and grew my portfolio so quickly. So if you do want that help and you're interested in knowing your financial position, so definitely smash that link in the description below where it says you can book in a strategy session. Now these strategy sessions are getting booked out well in advance. So if you're finding there's a problem to book them, that's just because they're booked out. So you just got to go a few weeks ahead, try and book in the time. And of course we're super busy at the moment, but I ensure that we will get around to everyone. Be proactive, take the opportunities now, because when the media comes on board and they start going from property prices aren't falling by 30% and they're actually going to go up, like Ravi was saying all this time, that's when we're going to see an influx of so many people trying to get not only our help, but get into the market, trying to get loans and things like that. So you want to get ahead of that curve. So if you want some help, contact me down below. Otherwise, send me an email. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks, guys.